Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to each one of you from afar, from here on the island, and for those who could not be with us because of the storm or other reasons. As you just heard, we are recording this so that it can be shared with you at a later time as well. I'm Dr. Lorna Chambers Andrade, and I'm a retired professor of professional nursing and pre-med education. And at present, I'm the NAACP's branch here, Martha's Vineyard Educational Chair. At this time, I'd like to share with you some information that we have given out to our members. The Martha's Vineyard branch of the NAACP and ADME Tech Foundation is ongoing in outreach with education on prostate cancer. This is for all our islanders, for all the families, for all our friends and associates, and of course, our staff at the hospital. The Martha's Vineyard Hospital has been in collaboration with us with this. Just before the pandemic, we did a live presentation where Dr. Shatern met and educated with the staff members and grand rounds, followed by an afternoon of education where we did some preliminary assessments and screenings and gave out information for follow-up for individuals to seek care. I want to remind each one of you that November is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. And with this, we wear the color light blue bow as a designation. First, we want to remind everybody to get vaccinated. It's so important, especially during this time. We need you to have your COVID vaccine, whether you need 1, 2, or the current booster. We want you to continue wearing masks and stay at a distance. We also want you to remember with the Man O Grand Project, we need you to seek medical attention. Many of you men have missed appointments due to the pandemic, but we're asking you to please get vaccinated and make appointments. You need to know that among the men, Black men die at a much higher rate. We want you to understand about getting a diagnosis and what to ask for and getting support with mental health as well, and also with finance and treatments, knowing the signs and symptoms and preparing for those treatments. Last, we want to share with you that we had our General Colin Powell, who used to be an ambassador for prostate awareness, and he has since passed. With all that being stated to you, at this time, I'd like to introduce to you my co-chair, Dr. Robert Tankard, who's also alias as Coach T. Many of you know him. And he's the host of Tank Talk, Martha's Vineyard Television, and director of our veteran services here on Martha's Vineyard. Take it away, Coach.
All right. How you guys doing today, this evening? Good. I'm glad everybody made it through the storm that we had yesterday. I thank God that it was rain and not snow. Because if it was snow, we wouldn't have this meeting, and we'd be, I guess, in igloos for a while. But anyway, yes, I am the Martha's Vineyard Veterans Outreach Advocate Helper, and I also serve on the Martha's Vineyard Television Board of Directors, and as a director of the Martha's Vineyard Bank, and vice president of the YMCA. During my stay, being on the island and an educator, I've been an educator since 1972 here on the island and worked in the school committee. Was the chairman of the Cape Cod Collaborative. And as a veteran and working with the veterans here on the island and working with the hospital and whatnot, we try to encourage our veterans to get all the medical attentions they can get. As it stands right now, I provide them with support in rent, food, transportation, housing, counseling when needed, medical needs. And the present time, we are working with the town of Oak Bluffs in trying to provide veteran housing. We're a little, when you're in the military, Uncle Sam used to let us stay in the woods for 2 weeks out of the year. But when some of these guys are staying in the woods 9, 11 months, it's a little discouraging. So we're trying to get some of these veterans out of the woods, out of the back seat of their cars, out of the cellars of some of their friends' houses, and give them a place to live. After all, they gave us a lot more of their lives that they're dealing with. So, without any further ado, back to you, Dr. Lorna.
Well, at this time, I would be introducing our president of the NAACP. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to be with us because he's at a wake of a dear friend who was killed, actually. But I bring you greetings from Arthur Hardy Doubleday. He's a young, innovative attorney who's our president. He's bringing a new focus to our NAACP and recruiting younger members, and we're so happy to have him on board. He wishes that each one of you listening in tonight will get exactly what you need to know and to continue on with the awareness about prostate cancer. So back to you. I'm going to send it back to you, Dr. Bob.
Okay. Do we have these two gentlemen that I'm going to introduce? I've had the opportunity to have them on Tank Talk many times. And they're two individuals that really think a lot of the vineyard, that support the needs of the vineyard. And the greatest thing is that most of the time, a lot of times politicians you can't get in touch with. But you can actually call these two guys and they will answer the phone and talk with you. All right. I'd like to introduce to you Massachusetts Senator Julian Cyr from the Cape and Islands, Assistant Majority Whip and Representative Dylan Fernandez, Barnstable and Dukes County, Nantucket, Vice Chair and Joint Committee on Tourism, Art, and Culture Development. These two young men are my buddies, and I really appreciate what they're doing. Julian, how you doing over there? How's things up there on the Cape?
It's well, it's
listen, you got light.
I got light, man. You got light, man.
You got light.
on the Outer Cape, we've got we actually had power restored last night, but we got a ways to go on the rest of the Cape. There's a lot of outages, a lot of outages on the island.
Hey, listen, it was the same. I got mine. Mine went out at 5:50, 5:45 yesterday morning. I got it back at 8:20 last night. And I was praying that we'd get it. But you're looking good, guy. You're looking good. And there's my other buddy there, Dylan. How you doing? You're looking good, man. What are you
hey, I'm at the State House. We'll be here all night.
Are you guys trying to take after me? Come on now. I'm 75 years old. You guys can't be looking that good.
We are just in our 30s, so I don't think we're going to look as good as you, Dr. Banker, by the time we get to your age. But
Dylan, you're on. Julian, you're on.
Awesome. Dylan, you want me to go?
Yeah, you
cool. Go. First of all, it's so nice to be with all of you. I'm scrolling through all the tiles and to see a lot of friends, both on island and to see some friends from off island in this work. And I'm so glad we're talking about prostate cancer. Yes, because this is a real issue of health equity. Black men have 2.5 times the rate of prostate cancer, when compared to the rest of the population. And so from a health equity perspective, we need to be talking about that. And also from a personal perspective, prostate cancer has affected my family. My grandfather had prostate cancer. 2 of my uncles have had prostate cancer. And actually right now, my dad Adrian is undergoing treatment for pretty early stage prostate cancer, but still nonetheless is receiving radiation treatment. Actually, right now he's getting treatment 5 days a week for radiation, and he just started that this week. My family and I have sort of a renewed appreciation for how prostate cancer affects so many of us, and I think especially as men. That we really talk about prostate cancer. Yes, the importance of screening. My dad has a really proactive primary care physician who, ran a number of tests that you typically don't run. Really caught this really, really early. He only has about 10% of his prostate is affected by cancer right now. Was able to get into treatment, and he has a really, really, pretty remarkable prognosis because we've caught it so early. That's not the case for so many people and so many men, and so. It's really important that we're talking about this stuff, right? That men come out about living with prostate cancer and having undergone prostate cancer treatment. I think also as men, it's really important that we talk about everything around prostate cancer, and just going through with my dad, what this means, what this could mean, what the different treatments may mean for him. That's sort of awkward stuff that men are not good at talking about. And yet we know that when we actually talk about, what's really going on, what's real in people's lives, we're going to get people treatment sooner, and we're going to make we're going to get people treatment sooner, and we'll save more lives in the process. And so this is an area that I've worked on for quite a long time. You're going to hear from Dr. Stern, someone who I met very early in my tenure at the Department of Public Health. I think I met Dr. Stern like a decade ago, and she and her team have been doing pretty incredible work here. And you're going to hear from some really great folks. You're going to hear from Dylan. But it's good to be with all of you. And I think it's really important that we're talking about prostate cancer. Yes, within within and among men of color, and then also more broadly. Among the broader population. I think the more we talk about this, the more we share our stories, the more we make this personal. That's how we're going to get people into treatment. That's how we're going to catch this very treatable cancer sooner, and that's how we're going to save lives. So I'm really honored to be invited to pop on tonight, and I'm thrilled to be here with my friend Dylan Fernandez. He's really it's pretty special that Dylan's joining us, right? So the House right now is currently in debate. And they're trying to figure out what do they do with over $5 billion in American Recovery Plan monies and in surplus dollars. So the fact that Dylan's able to sort of peel away from the debate and address us is a big deal tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to him.
They call you guys. They call you two guys Starchy and Hutch.
I like that.
Representative Fernandez, how you doing?
Good, man.
Hey,
Good to see you, doctor. Both doctors. Good to see both of you. How are you guys?
Pleasure.
Good.
Yeah, good. Hanging in there.
Good. Yeah.
Thank you for being with us, too.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, we've been going. Our first debate was at 9 a.m. this morning, and we'll be here for a few more hours. So it's good. Honestly, this is a nice break, to be honest with you.
Good.
But it's good to be with you guys. And look, I couldn't be with you if I wasn't at the State House. I love to send you guys a picture. So my driveway at my place in Falmouth, on one side of the driveway is a downed tree, so you can't get out that way, and the other side of the driveway is literally a downed electrical pole, like wires. So I don't. They sent me a text saying 99% of people will be powered restored by Saturday night. I don't know. I might not ever have power again, judging by how bad it is where I'm at. So I'm glad I'm here. Glad I can be with you guys. One note, because it's a little off topic, but I'm talking to Vineyarders. We did just secure $300,000 for the first to support the first homeless shelter for women on the Vineyard as part of the budget. Good. So really excited for that.
Yeah.
How do you feel Dylan.
Yeah,
that's
it's an amazing
huge,
deal.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's
amazing,
fabulous.
That's
we're very, very pleased. And more to come on that, but you guys are the first to hear it because we're just in the middle of debate here. But that's a big deal, and that's something that Harbor Homes has worked on, and the local towns have been supportive of. So we're just happy to pitch in. But prostate cancer, I mean, this is something that is really close to my heart. My father got prostate cancer when he was in his very, very early 50s. He might have even been in his late 40s. He was very young to get it. It's something that other families of members have been affected by it. But I remember, this was a while ago he got it, and I was really young. And just having that, I broke down when he told me, because the word cancer is so scary. Fortunately, the more I learned about it, the more I learned about the different treatments, the less scary it became, but only because he caught it early. And so, to Julian's point, everyone's point about checking, making sure it's caught early, it makes a life-saving difference, and a big difference in your future healthcare. And so for me, very personal issue. I know I'll be getting screenings very early, considering my dad got it at such a young age. And this is a huge racial equity issue. As Julian said, it's 2.5 more. You're 2.5 times more likely to die as a Black man than a white man. And we just have a bunch of, this is one of many just, products of racism in our healthcare network that really has to be changed. And we got to shine a light on that racial inequity repeatedly as well. And we need to do more around that. And we've been always supportive of Fina Stern's amendment. We're going to keep supporting it. I think we got it up 200K this last year, if I'm correct, which is a really nice bump. But we can go even more. That was an increase of 200,000. We can go higher than that. And we need to deal with racism and healthcare. I mean, we did a commission on disparities between maternal health, which is another huge issue. If you look at racism in terms of how doctors prescribe medication, in terms of interpreting patients' pain, that's a huge issue that needs to be looked at. And I think I think we need to really get at the root cause of it. And so we actually have a bill around anti-racism, teaching anti-racism in school and our education system from an early age. And as part of that, we didn't, a lot of these bills are just focused on American history, but we know this is and that's important, but we also know this is American present. And so as part of our bill, we actually had it so that kids who are taking health class learn about healthcare disparities like this, and learn about what the disparities and the racism that exists today. Because without that kind of that background knowledge and that kind of core set of facts that we're living with as a society up front, it's going to be really hard to correct these things. So that's I think everyone else is a more eloquent speaker on this than I am, but I know that this is an issue that I deeply care about, one that's affected me very personally, and one that we need to absolutely reverse. There's no reason these racial equities should exist other than the fact that we have a racist society, which we need to get at the root of, not just in healthcare, but on so many issues. So thank you guys for having me. And it's good to see you. Let me know when I can come back on Tank Talk.
Anytime. Open invitation, both of you.
The best show on Island.
You guys are the greatest, and we're so happy to have both of you representing the Cape and the Islands.
Forgive me for having Nantucket in the background. I just where I'm sitting.
Right.
I have the vineyard on this other side of my office.
That's all right. Hey, we're all family.
It's about family on the bacon, right? You didn't get $300,000 from Nantucket, did you? No. That's a lot of money, Dylan. Wow, you guys are raising the bar for us.
Right. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Guys. And I'm sorry, I do have to hop off to get back to this, but I really appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Thank
nice to
you
be with
so
you. Thank you
much.
for inviting us to be a part of this.
I don't.
Wonderful. Okay, let's see. Oh, guess who's up? Martha's Vineyard Hospital. My buddy there, Thaddeus Thompson, who's the administrator for Clinical Services and Equity Officer. And he's going to share the latest metrics, statistical analysis that they have of the distribution of the actual boosters that they're given at the present and where they're at. So take it away, Thaddeus.
Thank you, Dr. Andrade. And I'm actually gonna stay pretty high level here because I think there's a lot of important stuff to talk about. I love the fact that this is being discussed as racial equity issue and health disparities. If there's any single thing trying to take positive from so many difficult challenges, if it's any single thing related to the COVID pandemic and the outbreak, is that it's shed a light and initiated conversations about health disparities and racism and racial inequity in a way that many people argue we haven't seen since the 60s and 70s. So it's great to be having these conversations. I actually trained in a school of public health. I went to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and so much of what I took from my educational experience was about being able to talk about these things in this way. And it's been really incredible as a hospital administrator my whole career to really see us now having these conversations within the healthcare delivery system and not just in public health services. So I'm really encouraged by that. I'll share one statistic. We on the island recently, the 7-day positivity rate, which is one of the way we measures the spread of the disease, has vacillated anywhere between about 1.5% and 3.5%. And for the vast majority of the pandemic, the island has fared better than the rest of the state and better than the rest of the country, which has been really good. And in fact, if we were to look at something like anticipated deaths based on our population, the island has fared extremely well. And you add to that this sort of underlying issue of Dukes County, I believe, being the single most, the senior most county in the entire state. Those things would lead you to believe that if you were guessing the analysis of it all, you'd be thinking that there'd be more outbreak and more morbidity and mortality than there has been. So we've been really, really fortunate. And I think a lot of that is a consequence of the island being responsible. The NAACP participated in that in a very meaningful way, encouraging people in its public service announcements. So I think we have a lot to be thankful for and proud of in that regard. If you looked at, say, Florida as a measure, and you assume that things were correct, obviously it's been really, really challenging for them for most of the pandemic. And recently, actually, the stat had been that that their spread was actually the lowest, the absolute lowest in the country. And it seems really odd, but one of the things that's being discussed is that there's perhaps a cyclical nature to the disease. So we're certainly not out of the woods. In fact, they're talking about it being potentially a 2-month cyclical nature of it. So there's a lot of pressure on them when things are bad, and then they over celebrate when things are good. And I'll let epidemiologists and biostatisticians speak to that. But that's concerning to me because if you think about the body as a connected system, and you think about each of us individually as a connected community, typically having wild vacillations are not good signs, right? Whether you're talking about your blood sugars, or anything else, wild vacillations are never good signs. So I think in this case, Florida, but really all of us need to be really conscious of the fact that we're not out of the woods. We need to continue to be diligent and diligent about trying to mitigate the spread of the disease, because I think some of that vacillation also probably is what's contributing to potential variants, and that's certainly not a good thing as well. The hospital was really fortunate to have all the dedicated employees that we do have, and the expertise that we can capture both from the island community and from our own staff and from the Mass General Brigham system in general, and we learned quite a bit. And I would say that if we are unfortunate enough to have another spike or outbreak, that there's a number of those things that we can set up again very quickly. I would assume that many of you saw all the things that went on in terms of us setting up the vaccine clinics and being able to get a lot of doses and a lot of arms. And so we've broken some of that stuff down as things have calmed down. But we certainly have the capability to.
Oops, we lost your sound.
Sorry, bring those things back up if they're needed. So again, we saw, like most organizations, we saw a significant decline in things like screening. So mammography screening, and tonight's topic, prostate screening. So we've obviously encouraged people to come back. The hospital has seen a return to our pre-pandemic volumes, so that doesn't seem to be a problem now. But here tonight, I definitely want to take this opportunity to encourage folks. Obviously, this is really about that health inequity, about the 2.5 times increased likelihood of dying when you're an African American and person of color. So it's critically important. We're here to support the island. We're here to support the community. Please follow up on your screenings. Please come to us and get the care that you need. This is critically important. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Excellent. All right, Dr. Bobby, back to you.
There we go. Listen, I don't know, this next person that I'm going to introduce, she either doesn't sleep at night or she's got to be at least 200 years old, because all the accomplishments that this person has done in her lifetime is unbelievable. I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Faina Stern. Dr. Faina Stern has been a founding board member, president and CEO of Admatec Foundation since 1997. Dr. Stern also serves in multiple leadership positions at the National Institute of Health and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and as a faculty member at the Harvard Medical School, Massachusetts, General Hospital, Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, Boston Children's Hospital. She has been a leading groundbreaker in state, national, and international programs in cancer research, education, awareness, and advocacy, creating a new standard of patient care and reducing health disparities. Her career focus has been on prostate cancer since she joined Admatec, and on breast cancer prior to 1997. She is a recipient of multiple commendations and awards. I'd like to introduce you to the one and only Dr. Faina Stern. You got it.
So much, Dr. Tankard. Thank you. I would like to thank Dr. Andrade, Martha Vineyard, and ACP for the opportunity to have this event. I also would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge 2 members of my staff who were instrumental in making it happen. One of them is Thomas Satam. They're hiding behind Admatec Foundation logo. Thomas Satam, who is our Manager of Community Outreach and Advocacy, and Ali Adam, who is a health policy coordinator, actually concerned about internet instabilities and all the weather situation in Massachusetts. We pre-recorded my presentation. Ali, if you would be kind enough to please start my presentation. I'd like to express my gratitude to Martha's Vineyard and ACP Dr. Lorna Andrade and President Doubleday for the opportunity to address prostate cancer awareness in the times of the COVID pandemic. This event is a part of the Admitech Foundation's ongoing program in prostate cancer awareness and education in our state, with primary focus on African American, Hispanic, and Latino men. Our program was initiated since 2014 in partnership with multiple community organizations. Senator Julian Serr and Representative Dylan Fernandez have been strong supporters of our program since their elections to the state legislature. Last but not the least, we would like to acknowledge United Against Racism initiative of the Massachusetts General Brigham Healthcare, represented in this event by Dr. Ike Madeke and Mr. Thaddeus Thompson. Both COVID-19 and prostate cancer have emerged as leading health disparities in Black and Hispanic communities. In April last year, early in the pandemic, we have recognized that the areas of prostate health disparities directly overlap with the pandemic hotspots. Since May last year, we have expanded our program to include education about both prostate cancer and COVID-19. Prevention and early detection are critical for saving lives and eliminating disparities in both prostate cancer and COVID-19. The future of this pandemic depends on us. What can we do to end this pandemic and protect our families and communities? We can drive down infections drastically by wearing masks, particularly indoors or in crowded outdoor settings, in combination with reducing social contacts. If we develop flu-like symptoms, we can ensure early testing and self-isolation and help public health experts to trace our contacts. We can end this pandemic by complying with vaccinations. Masks are the best tool we have for preventing spread of infection. On this slide, you can see predictions from the leading medical forecasting group at the University of Washington as recent as October 20th. If most of us use masks, we can save over 1,000 lives and prevent countless infections by February 1 next year. Vaccines are the best tool we have for ending this pandemic. In mid-September, CDC reported that in fully vaccinated people, infections were reduced 5 times, with hospitalization and death reduced over 10 times. COVID vaccines have been proven safe and effective in millions of people aged 12 and older. Many experts pointed out that the vaccines could have prevented over 97% hospitalization and death we are seeing today. We are much more likely to get into a car accident and sustain a serious injury than develop significant complication of COVID vaccine. Vaccines are the best way to protect not only ourselves, but also our families and our communities. By accepting vaccinations, every individual help us get one step closer to ending this pandemic. Since early last year, more than 5 million children were diagnosed with COVID-19. By the first week of September this year, new COVID cases in kids reached record levels. Our masks and vaccinations protect our children. On September 14, Boston Globe journalist Renee Graham wrote an opinion, "The unvaccinated and the orphans they leave behind." Citing scientific evidence, she pointed out that over 100,000 kids lost their parents or caregivers to COVID in this country, with Black kids impacted disproportionately. She raised an important question: can we allow our hesitancy and fear of the COVID vaccines define our children's future? Last month, leaders of pediatric medicine issued a public appeal.
Pediatricians are advocates for children and protectors of their health. Now we are asking for children to be made our national priority. Preserve their in-person education by mandating vaccines for all who are eligible and wearing masks in schools. Protect them with highly safe and effective vaccines. This expert joined the American Academy of Pediatrics in calling for rapid vaccine approval for younger children. Only 2 days ago, it was exciting to watch that vaccines for kids aged 5 to 11 have been recommended by the FDA advisory panel, and upon approval from CDC, may become available as early as next week. On July 27, U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy shared publicly that he lost 10 relatives to COVID-19. He pointed out masks help us reduce spread of infection, while vaccinations remains the key to ending this pandemic. While we are dealing with this pandemic, prostate cancer cannot wait. And yet many men avoid visits to their doctors out of understandable fear of contracting coronavirus. Unfortunately, delays in prostate cancer care can cause reduced quality of life or even loss of life. Clinical facilities created a safe environment for patient care, including virtual visits and telehealth, ongoing in-person care such as physicians' appointments and testing, medical procedures such as biopsies and treatment. Ongoing care is particularly important for Black, including Hispanic men, who are 2.5 times more likely to die compared to white men. However, early detection saves lives and eliminates health disparities. With early detection of prostate cancer, every man is alive in 5 years. In sharp contrast with late diagnosis, when cancer is spread to other organs, only 28% of men remain alive during the same period of time. In prostate cancer, screening with blood test called PSA is the best tool we have for prevention and early detection, critical for saving lives and reducing health disparities. During pandemic, it is more important than ever to take charge of your prostate health. It is important to know your risk factors, such as African heritage, family history of prostate cancer, particularly brother or father, and increasing age, 50 and older. You can ensure early detection. During your annual visit, ask your doctor about PSA blood test and digital rectal exam to determine if they are right for you. You need to talk to your doctor starting at the age of 40 if you have risk factors we just discussed. If you do not have risk factors, please start at the age of 45. Before screening, it is important to avoid exercise or sex, which may impact your testing results for 1 week. After screening, you need to ask your doctor if your test is normal or if you need referral to a prostate cancer expert. 2 weeks ago, Admitec Foundation held a virtual annual global summit on precision diagnosis and treatment of prostate cancer. Our summit has brought together the key international opinion leaders representing every clinical expertise to achieve the following goals: educating medical community and general public, reaching consensus on the best emerging clinical practices and research priorities, and expedited transfer of promising innovations to patients. Screening of prostate cancer with PSA blood test reduced death by more than 50% and has been more successful in that regard than many other established cancer screening programs. In men before diagnosis of prostate cancer, we have seen rapid advances in accurate testing, which created a new standard of patient care, including rapid development of blood and urine tests for molecular markers and imaging tools such as MRI. Current evidence shows that these accurate molecular tests and non-invasive imaging and their integration with screening improve identification of men who need to undergo biopsies. Conversely, these accurate diagnostics also eliminate unnecessary biopsies in a lot of men. Our summit suggested that if men are referred for biopsies based on PSA screening alone, they should talk to their doctors about additional testing to determine more precisely if biopsy is actually needed. I think it is fair to say that traditional biopsies, which are blind to prostate cancer and performed without accurate imaging, such as MRI, are slowly but surely moving into the dustbin of history. In this slide, MRI shows prostate cancer lesions and guides biopsy needles with great precision. Health disparities panels of our summit highlighted the importance of MRI in Black men who are likely to have lesions in the front part of the prostate that cannot be reached by physical exam or standard blind biopsies. Our summit also highlighted the importance of assessing genetic predisposition to prostate cancer. Testing for genetic mutations is particularly relevant for men with family history of aggressive prostate cancer and other malignancies, as well as for men diagnosed with aggressive local, regional, or metastatic prostate cancer. Genetic counseling is preferred prior to testing for men with family history and after positive test for genetic mutations. In men with prostate cancer, there are two pillars of the current diagnostics: MRI and genetics. While MRI shows cancer location, genetic tissue analysis reveals underlying cancer biology. With this precision diagnostics, we can now accurately determine if each individual has a slow growing or even harmless disease and needs only careful observation, or an aggressive prostate cancer requiring immediate life-saving treatment. A recent large study in over 100,000 men in the Veteran Administration health system showed that with equal access to prostate cancer care, there were equal patient outcomes, including equal probability of death of prostate cancer in Black and white men. And this health equity was independent of the level of education or income. Similar results have been reported in military medicine. Based on this and other evidence, our summit's health disparity panel concluded that access to care is the key factor in eliminating health disparities. It is particularly relevant to our state with its universal access to care. We are here today because with appropriate patient education, combined with access to high-quality care, we will be able to achieve prostate cancer equity in Massachusetts. To achieve this goal, we recently expanded our community education and awareness to include a program for improving access of high-risk men, including African American and Hispanic individuals, to high-quality clinical care. We have been working with leading state experts in prostate cancer care and research who have the most advanced diagnostic and therapeutic resources available today, like Massachusetts General Brigham Healthcare, including Dr. Ike Madeke, who is participating in this event. In parallel, we are leveraging extensive partnerships Admitech has built with multiple community organizations to let everyone know about this opportunity. This organization include, but are not limited to, New England Area Conference of NAACP and its local branches, including Martha's Vineyard branch and Latino Health Insurance Program. Our clinical care equity program is open to any man who is referred by his primary doctor to a prostate cancer expert for initial evaluation or second opinion. Men who participate in this program can receive an expert consultation regarding every aspect of prostate health, including questions if screening is right for them, their screening results to consider if further non-invasive testing is needed prior to invasive biopsy, appropriateness of invasive biopsy and related choices, family history of prostate cancer to determine if genetic testing or counseling are needed, diagnosis of prostate cancer and related treatment options, complications experienced after biopsy or treatment, evaluation after treatment to learn about the next steps, including prevention or early detection of cancer return or progression. Summer Mills, a member of the Admitec Foundation staff, serves as a statewide clinical coordinator. If you have any questions, please contact Summer by phone 617-523-3535 or by email equityprojectcoordinator@admitecfoundation.org. In summary, prevention and early detection and related public awareness and education save lives and reduce health disparities in both COVID-19 and prostate cancer. Masks and vaccinations prevent COVID infections, hospitalization, and death. Advances in screening and diagnosis created a precision, individualized approach to prostate cancer care. Dr. Makeda will describe recent advances in treatment. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. That's great.
Was indeed wonderful. Wonderful education and update, Dr. Shatern. Okay, at this time, I'm going to be introducing to you our urologist, Dr. Icana Carl Maduke, who is a physician and scientist serving as a urologic oncology fellow at the Combined Harvard Urologic Oncology Fellowship at Massachusetts General Hospital and the Brigham and Women's Hospital. He graduated from medical school and completed the medical scientist training program at the University of Illinois at Chicago, where he has also obtained his PhD. Dr. Maduke researches and investigates the roles of specific genes in the development of normal prostate and prostate cancer. He went on to complete a urology residency also at the University of Illinois at Chicago. His clinical interests are in the treatments of a broad spectrum of urological malignancies, and his academic interests are in elucidation or to explain of an actionable genetic targets for high-risk prostate cancer. Without any further ado, Dr. Maduke.
Thank you for the introduction. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right. So just by way of introduction, prostate cancer is the number one diagnosed male malignancy in the Western world, and the second leading cause of cancer-related deaths in men, with about 30,000 a year, and about a 1 in 9 lifetime incidence. With regards to PSA, just a brief history. It's a serum protease with a functional role in the liquefaction of seminal fluid. It's first discovered in the 70s in Japan, and then a test was developed in the 80s with approval by the FDA for monitoring of treatment, and then for early detection in 94. And so what you appreciate here is a sharp increase in the incidence following the approval by the FDA for early detection, followed by a drop once we started treating, by a continuous drop here, and then a slow improvement here. What you see here is that essentially you had about a flat line up until about late 90s, and then a steady decline in the number of deaths. This was probably secondary to a lot of overtreatment of prostate cancer from a lot of overdetection with PSA. And that led to, the controversial recommendation by the U.S. task force, where they gave a recommendation of D for PSA, essentially saying it was harmful to men. And what we appreciated was that within 5 years, what we saw was an increase in men presenting with regionally advanced disease as well as distant disease, sort of similar to the era of pre-PSA. And rightfully so, the U.S. task force backtracked on the recommendation and now suggested that PSA is an individual decision that should be made between the patient and the physician. And so, PSA is not perfect. It can be falsely elevated for other diseases, BPH, infection, inflammation, or just instrumentation or some sort of stimulation of the prostate. And so, nonetheless, the 10-year survival is still around about 98% when diagnosed in the Western world. And that's because, again, about 90% of these are discovered in the local or just regionally advanced stage. However, if you have disease in other parts of the body, you're metastatic, that drops about 30% 5-year survival. So the goal is still to catch the disease here and not let it advance. And so Whitmore was one of the founders of urologic oncology who passed 95, actually, from metastatic prostate cancer. But he had a lot of sayings that have been deemed Whitmoreisms. And one of them was, in regards to prostate cancer, was, is cure possible? And if cure is possible, is cure necessary? And if cure is possible, is it possible when it is necessary? And so in this realm, we'll go ahead and move forward with regards to prostate cancer. And thinking about the U.S. tax recommendation, which was that initially they didn't recommend PSA. And so we'll bring that full circle and answer these questions. With regards to the advances, we'll sort of talk about advances in detection, risk stratification, and then advances in treatment, usually just surgery versus radiation, and then we'll talk about some systemic treatments. So there are a lot of markers out there. There's PSA, there's free PSA, there's a 4K score. Some of these are blood-based, a lot of them are urine-based, and then some are tissue-based. I'll just use an example of one of the blood-based studies just to show you some of the persistent problems with all these tests. So this is our free PSA, and what you have here on the right is comparing total PSA to percent free PSA. And the area under the curve, or how well this test acts to detect prostate cancer, is here, about 0.53. When you use percent free PSA, that increases to about 0.72. So it's a better test for detecting prostate cancer. However, when you stratify by clinically significant prostate cancer, so that's a Gleason grade of 7 or higher, you're not able to discriminate with this test. So this brings us back to the full circle of overdetection. So not all cancer is created equal. So your Gleason 6s, most people agree now should not be treated. And this test, even though it increases the detection, it does not decrease the discrimination between clinically significant and not. And that's a problem with a lot of the other tests as well. But we'll jump right to multiparametric MRI, which has been shown to actually perform better than a lot of these tests. And so what you have here is just a graphic showing that multiparametric MRI actually detects clinically significant disease better than these other urinary-based tests. With regards to biopsies, once you've got a clinically significant suspected lesion, targeted MRI with fusion compared to your standard 12 core does better in every category here. So it's more sensitive, it's more specific, and the negative predictive value is much higher than with your standard 12 core. Better yet, it's able to avoid prostate biopsy in close to a third of men, which is not insignificant. But 1 or 2% of men can have urosepsis or complications from prostate biopsy. 1 or 2% might not sound like a lot, but if you're the one that has to present with an admission for IV antibiotics and urosepsis, that's 100% for you. So it's not clinically insignificant. And so a third of men are able to bypass a biopsy based on negative MRIs. If you look here, about 9% of men will have clinically insignificant prostate cancer after an MRI, compared to 22% in the standard group. So the question is, are we at the point where we can substitute MRIs for biopsies? Probably not. And so what we have here is a comparison of the negative predictive value with an MRI. And so really it's more dependent on the prevalence of disease. And so the higher the prevalence, the lower the negative predictive value. So you're in a range from 0.8 to 0.5. And so we're not there yet. We're getting there. But still, an MRI, at least for initial staging, cannot substitute for the biopsy. And so usually what most people do now is you do a targeted biopsy if there's a lesion in addition to the 12 core biopsy. If there's no lesion, you just do your standard 12 core. With the caveat that, again, about 30% of this overall might still be missed. With regards to how to perform the biopsy, we're now moving away from your traditional transrectal biopsy. And so what you have here is a probe that usually through the probe, you would put the needle that goes through the rectum into the prostate. And so how men are prepped for this, you perform an enema the morning of the biopsy. You take an antibiotic the night before, the morning of, and then the night after the biopsy. Now, this is not uniformly adopted, but when you go transperineally, you still use the probe in the rectum. However, you go through the perineum, you're able to address issues with post-biopsy sepsis because you're not going through the rectum. You're also better able to sample the peripheral zones as well as the anterior prostate over here. So a lot of times, a lot of lesions obscured if you go through the rectum, but you can better sample them here. With regards to risk stratification, this is a busy slide here, but I just want to take you to intermediate risk and up, so intermediate and high and very high. There's no debate with regards to what should be done. These should be treated. And so that's your Gleason 7, 8, 9, 10. That's your clinically significant prostate cancer. We agree that if that's not treated, that's amenable to spread and cause metastatic disease. Where we have more advances and where there's more of a concern is very low to low risk disease. So those Gleason 6s. We agree that most men in this category don't need to be treated, and usually active surveillance is what's recommended. So active surveillance is you're actively doing something. And so typically you get a biopsy within a year or 18 months, usually followed by a multiparametric MRI. That being said, there's other studies that can strengthen whether or not a match will be placed on active surveillance, even though the Gleason score is 6. Some of these are Polaris. So this looks at cell cycle progression and gives an output of 10-year prostate cancer death with conservative treatment. So if you don't treat this patient, what's his risk of death in 10 years? Oncotype DX that gives you a genomic prostate score, and that predicts the risk of adverse outcome at a prostatectomy. And so, do you have involvement of the seminal vesicles? Do you have prostate cancer spread outside of the prostate? What is your risk? So you get a man who has, say, Gleason 6 prostate cancer. The PSA is 7 or even lower, but he has a high family, positive family history. Is not so comfortable on being on active surveillance. You can have some of these adjunct tests to make a decision. And about 50% of patients or physicians will alter their recommended management based on these tests. And then Decipher looks at about 22 RNA genes, and this predicts metastatic progression of localized disease. Usually in this space, it's after treatment, but it's moving closer to on the post-biopsy space. And so we can move on to talking about treatments. Again, the vast majority, at least in a localized setting, is usually surgery versus radiation. Let's talk about surgery first. So traditionally it was an open radical prostatectomy. I think most people now perform them either laparoscopically, robotic assisted, or just straight laparoscopic. The platform for doing robotic surgery is called the Da Vinci, which you can appreciate over here. And so the surgeon sits on a console away from the patient. The patient is draped here. You have about 4 robotic arms that go into the patient, and then it's controlled here. And you're able to perform more minute movements. With regards to advances in this space, this again is the traditional 1, 2, 3, 4 arms. You have an assistant here. After the surgery is performed, the prostate is removed through here. Most patients will stay about a day and go home the next day. An advancement in this space is the single port prostatectomy. And so you have just one arm that goes through here. This is the group out of Cleveland. Again, this incision is about 2.5 centimeters. You have one trocar, and through here, the 4 arms go in, and they spread in on the inside, and then you're able to perform the surgery. These patients usually will go home on the same day, and pain is better tolerated, and there's less use of narcotics. Oncological outcomes haven't been affected, so probably this is where the field is moving from a robotic standpoint. And then can touch base on our radiation. Brachytherapy is not used in monotherapy, so sometimes they use brachy. It's used as a boost. So usually the go-to is external beam radiation, plus or minus brachytherapy, plus or minus androgen deprivation. And this will really depend on your risk factor. Proton beam is still, for the most part, experimental, and you can't really get this in most places. With regards to systemic treatment, androgen deprivation or targeting testosterone remains the mainstay of treatment. Unfortunately, once you become advanced, almost without fail, you will become castration-resistant and then need to get different medications. Relugolix was the first oral FDA-approved GnRH antagonist, which was last year. And this is actually better well tolerated than your typical Lupron, your Leuprolide. In the immunotherapy space, CYP-T was the first immunotherapy approved for metastatic castration-resistant prostate cancer. And so here you take out the patient's cells, in vivo you expose them, mount a response, get some immune cells, and then put that back in the patient. More recently, Pembro was approved last year in this space for patients with PD-1 or PD-1 ligand expression, and that has been shown to improve survival about 4 months, which is actually not insignificant in the metastatic space. Another one that came out last year was rucaparib and olaparib. These are PARP inhibitors. Again, in the metastatic castration-resistant space, and these are for patients who have DNA mismatch repair mutations. And so bringing it full circle, back to those Whitmoreisms, is cure possible? Yes. we've shown that with early detection of prostate cancer. Is cure necessary? Maybe not so much, right? So for the Gleason 6s, we might not need to overtreat these patients. This was the reason why the U.S. Task Force came out with the recommendation to not screen. So all cancer is not equal. So even if it's possible, maybe it's not necessary. And for those patients, we can follow by active surveillance, or with a suspicion that they might be at increased risk, then use one of those adjunct tests to better risk stratify. And if it's cure possible and it is necessary, if they do advance to Gleason 7 or Gleason 8, what are the options to treat? And I think we have various modalities in this space. So in conclusion, PSA still remains the standard test. Secondary biomarkers that I talked about, I think multiparametric MRI remains the best in this space. We've made several advances from a surgical standpoint. I sure talked about a single port, which probably will start moving towards that arena. There's several medications in the advanced prostate cancer space, probably more on the horizon. And we continue to perform a lot of ongoing research for better risk stratification from a germline standpoint and from a genetic standpoint.
Dr. Madueke?
Let me stop my share here. Check any questions.
Thank you.
It's fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Very good. All right, to you, Bob.
Here we go. We're back to the Wonder Woman, as I call it. Dr. Stern. Dr. Stern, this is a time that we can ask Dr. Stern some questions. So in order for me to direct your question to her, just put your hand up so I can see it, and I'll just call on you, and then you can direct your question. This is the Q&A time. So who has the first question? Raise your hand. Okay, we have Arthur Bates. Go, Arthur.
Hi, I'm Arthur. I'm not up there now on Narragansett Avenue. I'm currently a Gleason 7-3-4. Very informative urologist. A couple of things that enlightened me too. Right now, I'm doing holistic weight and watch. I have about 20 supplements. I'm under care of 2 different urologists. And what else am I saying? Oh, flax seeds. I mean, I've lost 30 pounds. I mean, just tell me what I need to do. I'm doing it all. There's no greater incentive than to save your prostate. The one thing that was suggested, and the physician would not treat me, was the HIFU. Could you explain a little bit to me about HIFU? The doctor refused to treat me. He looked at it. He said, "You're a 7. I don't care." He said, "It's contained," and he says, "Come back in December." Oh, and by the way, I was a 6.62. I am down to a 5.7 PSA. So I'm doing everything I can do. So if you could just speak to me a little bit about the HIFU and what that entails.
So how many cores positive?
That I would have to go get my paper.
Right.
I mean, I've got it's like this.
Right. It's a point of contentious debate. Most urologists probably will not follow any force. The NCCN came out with a subset of men who have 3+4 who are patients for active surveillance. You have to have less than 3 cores. Okay. Each core can have more than 50% in each core. And your PSA has to be under 10. So your PSA is under 10, but you don't know the number of cores, and no core can have more than 50% in that core.
I must be in that because 3 urologists already told me I could wait and watch.
Right. Now, some other people will say any 4 has the ability to get out of the prostate. And so about half of the men who are in active surveillance, even for Gleason 6 disease, will progress to need treatment within 3 years. Did you get an MRI?
Oh, I had the MRI.
Okay.
And I had the biopsy,
gotcha.
Diagnosis, and I've been to about 6 urologists.
Right.
And 3 of them, one guy named Katz, I was referred to for active surveillance.
Right, right.
And he said he has patients like me with the same 3-4 for 7 years, just active surveillance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're not out there eating, Twinkies and Boar's Head luncheon meat.
Right.
You got to really follow a strict regimen, which I've been doing.
With regards to the HIFU, so again, that's still in that experimental realm, right? The problem with prostate cancer is it tends to be multifocal, and so if you have a solitary lesion, you might be a candidate for that lesion. But we know a lot of times, even though it's not picked up on the MRI or on the biopsy, there tends to be smaller spots that will grow. So it's still very experimental, and a lot of people will not take the risk of saying, I'm treating your prostate cancer with HIFU, because there have been some disasters with that. Men who've been treated with HIFU and have presented, 5 years of metastatic disease. And at that point, you've lost the window of cure, right? So again, it's still very experimental, and it doesn't treat the whole gland. And so with radiation, which is minimally invasive, you're still treating the whole gland. So some people would tell you, HIFU is sort of like a lumpectomy, right? With breast. The problem with that is you don't just do a lumpectomy with breast, you do a lumpectomy and radiation, right? So the radiation is still getting the whole field. And so HIFU does not do that. And so it's a questionable space. Now, people who offer HIFU or active surveillance for low volume 3-4s are for patients who essentially don't need to be treated. And so HIFU is not really a treatment. It's short. It might be it might make the patient feel better, but something's being done. But it's for patients who you probably will not take the prostate out. And for 3-4, most urologists will.
Yeah, that's what my primary suggested. And I both the one who diagnosed me and this other guy, Dr. Katz, said, let's see how you do the first year. And it said after the first year, you can make it, you're good. But they all said 10 is the magic number.
PSA of 10?
Yeah. They said that, and I went from 6.6 down to 5.7. And I did everything I could do. I brought my soursop leaves.
Do you know how big the prostate is? How many grams?
I don't know exactly. I mean, I couldn't even interpret it. Only reason I even understood what you were saying is I've heard so much chatter that I understood a lot of what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to do my best to avoid treatment. I go every 3 months. So September I went. December I go again, not only for PSA, but for MRI.
Good.
And then the biopsy. So I'm going to try and see how it goes. I've lost 30 pounds, flax seeds every day, about 20-something supplements the doctor recommended, broccoli, cauliflower, spinach every single day. Like it or not, and I don't care. I'm drinking the tea with soursop leaves and some other stuff, and I just came back from my primary. My blood work is beautiful. He said I was the best all day. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm buying soursops here in Brooklyn, and I'm eating a couple a week. So that's what I'm doing for my treatment. And like I said, thank you so much for the presentation.
You're very welcome.
Great. Any other hands? Dr. Lorna, back to you.
I'm surprised we don't have any more questions. Don't be shy. You have these experts here. Ask your question. No questions too stupid, as one might say. So please ask why they are here. You have the resource right before you.
Dr. Lorna,
I have a question.
is that they got that?
There is a question. Bob,
okay, who's got
somebody?
Kathy.
Is that Kathy?
Oh, good, Kathy.
Yeah. Well. Thank you for the presentation. I'll probably have to look at it again, because it was far above my pay grade. So my basic question, the different types of tests that you were speaking about, are they available at Martha's Vineyard Hospital, or do you have to go off island?
Good question. Thaddeus.
Thaddeus should be answered.
Yeah, so we do not offer prostate MRIs at this time. We are, however, upgrading the MRI probably this calendar year. Actually, we're replacing our CT device. That's an active project that's already started, and right in the middle of it, we're going to probably have the opportunity to upgrade the MRI. So when we upgrade the MRI, we'll have the capabilities to do prostate MRs.
Do you have a time frame for?
So I would expect that to be completed before the end of the fiscal year, which for us is September 30th. Realistically, it will March-ish, probably.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question. Mr. Thompson, do you have it available at Martha's Vineyard Hospital? Blood tests, biomarkers, blood tests like 4K score or any other blood or urinary tests which are for molecular markers which are more accurate than PSA screening?
I can't answer that question explicitly, and I probably should just leave it at that. What I will say is there's been most times with the lab, I'm impressed at the level of specificity and specialty that our lab's able to offer, but I cannot answer that.
And what Mr. Thompson describes really frames the importance of men and their wives discussing with doctors referral to a specialist urologist like Dr. Makeda, so they can sort out what other testing, if any, is needed in addition to PSA screening for further decisions.
One of the nice things I will say is those of you who are islanders are aware of some of the programmatic growth. So we do, in fact, probably 3 or 4 months in, added urology as a service, new service about 3 or 4 months ago that has a combination of virtual care and on island some procedural care. It's limited procedural care. This wouldn't be the type of procedure they would do here. However, there would be an opportunity for someone to see their provider virtually to get some of the workup done, for them to see them in person when they were here doing the procedure. So we try obviously to add services within the scope of our size and scope and maximize our connection to the Mass General Brigham system, and urology is one of our newer programs.
So will these tests be done at Mass General or at the Brigham?
So when a test is done, obviously, everything's drawn here, right? And then interpreted, depending on the test, interpreted by maybe a Mass General Brigham provider. But the testing itself, if it is available, is done here. I just can't speak to whether the specific tests that were asked are done here.
Okay. Other questions or concerns? Anybody else?
I think one of the questions, one of the things that if you have a spouse, especially the women, if you have a spouse and your spouse or your boyfriend, and they haven't not been tested, you need to encourage them to go get tested. You need to encourage them to do that. And if you got to take them by the hand and lead them there, you need to go. Okay, go ahead. Marie?
Well, actually, you, Dr. Tankard, you're a good lead-in to what I was going to say. I'm a therapist, okay? And what I have seen is with men, and I can't say I've broken it down via race, just generally with men, The biggest problem is A, keeping them on insurance. If, and down here you have a lot of self-employed men. And B, getting them to the doctors. It's a struggle. So, one of the questions I have for you is, are you seeing that if men came in earlier or more consistently, they'd have a better prognosis?
Yeah, I mean, I think early detection is key with regards to outcomes. So if you're able to catch a man, which again is the vast majority of men, 90% are localized or just regionally advanced, your survival outcomes are close to 100%, right? At 5 years, 98% or so. That drops drastically to about 30% if it's spread already. And for the most part, the PCPs are doing a good job of screening and sending these men to us. Those men who present, say, 40 or 45 with metastatic disease, that's probably not one we would have caught on screening. Those are men who probably have some sort of germline mutation and are very high risk. Nonetheless, they probably had a family history of, maybe breast or ovarian, pancreatic, or father with prostate cancer, and so they get screened earlier. The sooner they come in, then the better the outcomes.
I hear you, but once again, the issue is just even getting the guys into the PCP, and even before that, getting them to get insurance. So, but thank you.
I think that's. I mean, you can talk about why Black men don't go to the doctors, and talk about for 2 hours. I think there's a lot of layers to, distrust of the system.
Oh yeah,
is well published. But we just need to go out and do more outreach.
So, Dr. Madu, do you think that we should be educating like juniors and senior high school young guys so that they can be aware of this, so they can also help their parents, their fathers, or a male figure in the family to go and get their screening and start early at age 40? But just educating these kids in high school so that they can help their parents, significant others in their families, so that we can get this caught sooner than we're seeing at the present. What do you think about that?
I actually haven't thought about it from a child to a parent standpoint. Typically, we try to tell the parents that you showed up at 40 or 45 with metastatic prostate cancer. If you have kids, you let your kids know so they can start getting screened early, because there's probably something that's germline here. And a lot of men, I'm just speaking anecdotally, at least a lot of men of color don't tend to discuss this with their children, right? So,
right,
we have patients who say, "Well, oh, my dad died from cancer," but they don't know what kind.
Exactly.
Right? And so, I think it's probably more important the other way around is telling your children, I had cancer. I was treated with radiation and it came back, or I should have been surgery and it came back. Why are we at that risk factor? And then they know as they get older, their history.
Exactly. And whereas we have prostate cancer awareness month, I think it's a good start to deal with the young boys, and so that the young boys can deal with their parents and significant others.
Dr. Andrea, you said something. All the school systems now have a health part in their curriculum.
Right.
And it is very important. And me being an ex-health teacher myself at one point, going through and starting to tell them at a certain age, even at the 8th, 9th, 10th grade, that should be told to them as part of their curriculum, so that when they get to a certain age, or when they get out to the real world, they're not going to stay a kid forever. When they graduate from high school and they go on to college, it might be something that they may begin to when they have the yearly physical. introducing the yearly physical concept, start telling them to get the test, get the test, get the test, get the test. And then it becomes a normal thing. You know what I mean? They don't have to wait until they're 45. You know, they'll be getting to that test as they go along because they know that it's an important thing to do, you know? But men, you got to know men, man. You know, like I always said, women meet each other and in 5 minutes they know the history of the other woman. Men, I got friends that I known for 25 years, and all of a sudden they'd come up and say something. I said, well, when did this happen? Oh, 25 years ago. And you're just telling me now? You know what I mean? That's just a man thing, man. It's what, you know, we're creatures of a different habit or something. Go ahead, Marie.
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting so I think it's a great idea with the high school kids, but also with our young men in their early 20s to 30s, that whole decade there.
Yeah, get it right through.
But right now we're coming upon typically, and I don't know if COVID's any different. It's the whole open enrollment with the insurance, the Health Connector. Yes. And this is the time when I gently begin to talk to my guys that, you know, any mail you get, even if there's not a return address on it, you're to open it up because you never know if you don't respond to it, you're going to lose your insurance. Or, you know, the whole thing is if you go and you get insurance and if you qualify for a subsidized plan, you're going to be paying a lot less than, you know, going at market rate. And I am able to take that step with them a lot of times with them getting insured. Then the next step is getting them to their PCP. And then I begin to joke with them is that they'd be better off if they were a woman if they had periods. And they do laugh because but you got to use some humor. And but it is a struggle. It's a struggle getting them through the door.
Yeah.
So, but thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I think Kevin had a question.
Oh, Kevin. You're on mute.
Kev, you got to unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself. You're on mute.
You're muted. You got to unmute yourself, Kevin. Kevin, on your computer.
I can't hear you. Unmute yourself. Oh, there you go. Hello there, brother.
Hey, how you doing? My name's Kevin.
My baby brother, everybody.
I knew she was going to say that. I wanted to say I'm her younger brother, but she always refers to me as the baby. So
yes.
I'll live with that. Hey, listen, this has been a wonderful learning experience. And I just wish more of my comrades, brothers, and could have listened to some of this information because I know it would be helpful. And one of my closest friends, brothers, and who actually was the best man at my wedding, was diagnosed with prostate. And he had to go through treatment. And he is 60. Well, he's 61, yeah. He's 61, but he was diagnosed, I think, when he was either 59 or 60. So he had the treatment process and everything. So that also, made me conscious of this. But I had like two questions that I was kind of I'm puzzled about. I'm curious, what is the root cause of prostate disease, if there is any? That is one question. And my other question is, why do melanin, people of color, face individuals, there's such a discrepancy between the numbers as opposed to, people of European descent or the Caucasian people? What is it? Is it in the DNA? Is it the chromosomes? It's the environment impact or the lifestyle?
All right, let him answer the question. I'll be here all night.
Hey, don't get me started.
No, I think it's definitely multifactorial. There's an element of your genetics there. There's an element of access to care. I think some of the data that came out recently to show equal outcomes when you control for access to care is still somewhat controversial, right? Because we know there's still genetics there that plays a big role. Other factors with regards to diet and things like that can also play a role as well. So we know, for instance, men of Asian descent, they probably have the lowest incidence of prostate cancer. When they move to the Western world, within one generation, their outcomes are about the same. And so that was some of the basis for a lot of the soy-based studies, which didn't pan out to show a difference. But we know just based on that, you take a population, you move them over to a Western diet, their rates increase. But definitely, so like with family history, what does your family pass down to you? Why did your grandfather have prostate cancer at 50? You had prostate cancer at 45. There's something there to genetics as well. And so we're still decoding a lot of that. Some of these are germline, and you get another hit while you're older, and then that predisposes you. So a good one is, say, the BRCA genes, the BRCA genes, right? So we know that it's well documented in breast and ovarian cancer. If you have that gene in your genetics, you're at high risk of getting an ovarian or breast. That's actually pretty high for men developing prostate cancer as well. And so when I see a lot of my men, I always ask, family history of not just prostate, but breast, ovarian.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of times you see this in families, and so that's a genetic thing that could play a role as well. And so it's multifactorial. It's a little bit of everything. Now, but for men who have it in the genetics, now they are at higher risk of getting it earlier, and when they get it earlier, they're at higher risk of actually dying from it as well. And so that's where there's a lot of research ongoing to discover that. Some of the work I'm doing is actually going back to, I'm originally from Nigeria, but going back home to see if you can decode ancestral genetics that's being passed down here. And so, PSAs, the numbers here are like in 4s, 5s, 10s, 20s, we get excited, right? When I was down there 2 years ago, the average person there probably came with a PSA of about 500. Right? So at that point, you don't need a CT scan to know that it's spread everywhere. About a third of them came out in wheelchairs, and so it's already spread to the spine. They can't walk. But that's a combination of probably genetics as well as access to care. Right? We saw that here in the States before PSA. Men were presenting like this, But if we're able to study that population and decode ancestral predispositions, then we can translate that over here and see if we can get a better understanding of that germline risk factors. So it's probably a little bit of everything.
Okay.
But there are clearly differences in biology and genetics between early stages of prostate cancer between white men and between black men. However, access to care based on the best evidence we have, access to care is a much more important factor than differences in biology, as we have seen from VA system, as we have seen from military medicine. And if I were to make a take-home point, I would say, make sure you have insurance. Make sure you have a primary care physician, PCP. Make sure when you are tested for prostate cancer, make sure you talk to your doctor afterwards. If your test is normal, or if your test is not raise some questions or is not entirely normal. And if your primary care physician has any questions about the result of your PSA screening, do not wait for your doctor to do that. Ask him for a referral for expert urologist like Dr. Makeda, and they will sort out what further testing you need, whether or not you will need biopsy, whether or not you will need treatment, based on the most advanced testing, most advanced diagnostics available today.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Margot.
Yes, how you doing? I'm on this call because my husband has been diagnosed with prostate cancer about maybe 6 weeks ago. Now he goes to his urologist, recently retired, but he stayed with the practice, and they work out of George Washington Hospital in DC. So he had his biopsy there, and then about a week and a half ago, he had an MRI, a nuclear MRI. So he had a high PSA for the last 15 years. So they've been following him every 6 months to a year. And that was his fourth biopsy. And so this one, it turned out to be cancerous, and it was 3.5. And from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, doctors, that once it's a 4, it's outside of the prostate. And I'm trying to figure out, he's actually asleep right now because he's freaking out. One, he needs to be on, they tell me that a lot of people who have prostate cancer, their doctors put them on antidepressants because he is definitely depressed right now. And so I actually called his doctor's office today and asked them to give him some antidepressants because he really needs it. He came here today. I have a couple of homes, one down in DC and one in Lewis, Delaware. And he came up to the one in Lewis. And so he gets in the house and I ask him something and he just totally breaks down, which I've never seen. He just crying and, you all don't understand. I'm under so much stress, this cancer stuff. And I'm like, okay, fine. Let me leave you alone. And so is it pretty normal to put someone on antidepressants if they have cancer? And I mean, prostate cancer. And 2, it's a 3.5 out of 4, excuse me. Does it mean what I think it means? And why did it just show up given that they were checking him out so often? I'll shut up now.
Okay. Oh, well, yeah, I mean, sorry to hear that about your husband.
He's 71, by the way. 71, and he's about 395 pounds. That's the other issue.
Gotcha. The 5 you're referring to, I think it's probably one of the Gleason scores. Mm-hmm. So usually it's from 3 to 5, and you get 2 numbers. One is the most common, and then the other is the highest. And so usually it's, if you have the highest, it's 5. It usually tends to be like a 4 and a 5 or a 5 and a 5. Okay. Nonetheless, it seems like there's a 5 in there, which is the highest. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that puts him in a high risk. Now, when you're high risk, what's that risk mean? The risk that it might spread outside of the prostate, and once it's outside of the prostate, it goes everywhere else. And so typically we'll stage with some sort of cross-section imaging, and as well as a bone scan. Sounds like he got a nuclear bone scan.
Well, he had 2 things. He had a CAT scan, right? And a CAT scan showed something in his colon. So then they did the nuclear MRI, and they said that should show them what it is that they saw on the CAT scan. I hope. Yeah. And then, why does it take so long to get the results from an MRI, a nuclear MRI? It's, it's been about a week and a half now.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't speak to the places in Maryland.
Right.
But yes, so you stage when it's high risk to make sure to see where it is. Is it still in the prostate? Is it outside the prostate? Has it gone anywhere else? Gotcha. And then based on that, you offer treatment. If it's outside the prostate, then you need to give them something systemic. So mainstay will be to drop the testosterone to the androgens.
Okay.
And then usually you still treat the prostate. And so that's usually with radiation at that point in time. Okay. There's some trials that will still offer surgery. But again, that's on a trial basis. That is not standard of care yet.
Okay.
With regards to depression, unfortunately, some men take it better than others. Most urologists will not prescribe antidepressants. It's just not something we prescribe.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, there are survival groups, therapists, PCPs. If it's that bad, psychiatrists that can prescribe and monitor the patient on the antidepressant. But most urologists will not be prescribing the antidepressant.
Right. Now he's been going to GW, but my son, who survived 3 bouts of lymphoma, and myself have convinced him that he really should be going to Johns Hopkins. It's the best cancer place, this part of the East Coast, in the Washington area. So he's made an appointment with a urologist at Johns Hopkins and sent her the copies of the tests he already had. But is it hard to get an appointment? I think his appointment is not until sometime in November. So we're hoping, or I'm hoping, that he'll take all the information he's getting from GW and go to Johns Hopkins.
Hopkins is solid. It's a solid urology department. So.
Oh yeah, it's solid everything. I even go to Johns Hopkins. It's the best. On this close. So, but he talked to I think her name was Dr. Renee at Johns Hopkins. And she had looked at his stuff because I faxed it to her, and she said that she was talking surgery and said that the surgery is done upside down, and that his because he's so big, he'd break his neck, and therefore he would have to get lap band surgery, lose weight before they do the surgery. And I'm like, are you serious? It just seemed like, I know there are a whole lot of different ways to attack this. I mean, 3 of my uncles had this, friends have had it, and frankly, no one died from it, except one uncle who died after he had it for 15 years, right?
Right.
So I'm like, it's not something, it's very curable or livable for a long time unless you're very unlucky.
Right.
So, and I'm like, so why does, I just didn't understand that. One, why they would want to have to do the surgery, and 2, why he would have to lose all that weight before they did any surgery.
So the surgery, it's not done upside down per se, but you're done at an incline, right? So the head is here, and then you're operating here because all the intestines and everything have to move back so you can work deep in the pelvis.
Right.
Now, for bigger men, unfortunately, for a lot of men, when they move this way, even though you have a tube in your throat that's helping you breathe, all of that intestine moves down in the lungs, and it's hard to breathe. And so you can't really expand well to operate.
I got you.
So usually you just do it open. So when you do it open, you're like this. But then even if he's that big, it might be hard to get all the way down there.
Mm-hmm.
The single port, which I think they have it at Hopkins. You don't have to go into the belly, so you just do it on the outside, and he doesn't have to go this way. He can tolerate the air that needs to blow up, and you can still do it robotically. He doesn't have to lose too much weight. So that's one option there. But usually, even for bigger men, you can still try it at an incline. If they can't tolerate it before you put the general anesthesia, you let them know that if you can't do it robotically, we put you flat and we'll do it the traditional open way, but we have a big incision and we can still perform the surgery. But the fact is, offering surgery means that it might still be all within the prostate or just making its way out.
And another option to discuss whether or not your husband would be a good candidate for radiation treatment mentioned by Dr. Medeke in combination with systemic treatment potentially, such as medication that reduce the level of testosterone hormone in the blood that actually feeds prostate cancer progression.
Right.
And I do not know that weight is a critical factor for radiation treatment.
No, yeah. In fact, a lot of these men who can't tolerate the pneumoperitoneum or the incline end up getting radiation, even though they might not be. For my younger patients, I don't like to offer radiation if they can get surgery, because the outcomes are, after about 10 years, there's about a 10% improvement in mortality with surgery over radiation. Or if you got a young guy who cannot get surgery for whatever reason, then they get radiation. So,
I think practical advice is for your husband to decide to discuss with his primary care physician or with his urologist a possibility of referral for a radiation oncologist who will be able to look at your husband and determine if treatment can administer without waiting for a weight loss.
Okay, I'm writing this down. You said a radiation oncologist?
Radiation.
Oh, radiation. Okay. Okay, I didn't know there was such a thing. Excuse me. Y'all have...
Absolutely. Surgery is not only the option, and I think in general, it's a good idea for your husband to consult a radiation oncologist in addition to urologist.
Okay. The other thing that his sister suggested is that I make it clear to him that I'm going to every doctor's appointment he has so that I can take notes so that he can pay attention. And then what I did with my son was I went to all of his doctor's things and I took notes, I typed them up, and I gave them to him and his wife. And so that they could concentrate on talking to the doctor and what the doctor was saying, and let me concentrate on the rest. And I think I'm going to tell him that I'm going to go with him to all of these because, one, I've got to understand, I can help him, and then if I have questions, I can bring them up. And I mean, we're in this together. We've always been married, almost been married 50 years. So we're kind of in this together. He's not the only one that has this disease. I got it too.
Yeah. You're a good support system for him and an excellent wife. Very good, Margot.
Well, I try. 50 years is a long time, and we got 2 kids, a 46 and a 41-year-old, 1 and 6 grandkids. So, we got to hang in here as long as we can.
Okay. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, man. And thanks for all of you all's help.
Arthur?
We're almost getting to the close, but are there any more questions?
The only thing I wanted to suggest, I feel for your husband. One of the things that has been very helpful for me is reaching out to other prostate cancer men. There's a few of them right in my neighborhood in Oak Bluffs, and one of them has already been through the surgery, gives me that kind of support. It's every time you urinate, every time you you look at a woman, every time it's your whole life. It's unavoidable. So the pain, the crying, I went through that for about 3 months. Just try and be patient with him. Antidepressants may help if you can find a support group of someone who you can at least speak to, because there are times you just break down because it's something you really have to get used to. And I finally stopped crying. But if you can get him a support group, I think that would really help him.
Mm-hmm.
Betsy?
Thank you.
I think you had Betsy here, Lauren.
Oh, I can't see who that is.
Betsy?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi. Yeah, there was a cancer support group here that was very active. I don't know what happened to it. I've been out of the too long, but I know years ago I was one of the starters of one. We were very proactive in pushing prostate cancer referrals and support. And the support group men are very interesting. Women talk. Someone said women talk about everything. You don't hear men on golf course talking about their prostates. They're not good communicators about. And a prostate cancer support group, I think, is really vital.
Right. Well, we will check into it to see what's going on with the one that was previous of the pandemic to what's happening now and get back to our community.
All right.
I will find one for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Because of the bewitching hour, on behalf of the Martha's Vineyard NAACP, Bob Tankett, myself, we want to thank Dr. Shaturn and her staff members, Thomas Satham, and the young ladies who are working along with him. We also want to thank you so much to Dr. Maduke, the urologist, who's answered a lot of the questions along with Dr. Faye Shaturn. We want to thank Thaddeus Thompson, our clinical director and administrator from the Martha's Vineyard Hospital, for our ongoing collaboration with this. Senator Sayre, Representative Fernandez, also all our members that are here, and friends and family members. To each one of you, thank you for being here. And I know that there are questions that people are going to be thinking about after this program. And we would like to say that you would be able to repeat listening to this program by way of the taping that we'll have, hopefully on MVTV. We'll definitely have it on the NAACP website. There'll be a listing, and anybody can call me and I'll direct you. And there's follow-up information on how to contact any of these specialists. And that's it for now that I can think of. And I just want to say that this wasn't just happening here on Martha's Vineyard. We had people from Washington, Maryland, Atlanta, Boston, Ohio, and Cape Cod on this call tonight.
Beautiful.
Wonderful.
Thank you all.
Thank you all
so much.
Have a nice
And remember, this is a yearly event, So pass this information along to people.